And here we go. Welcome to the Leo Zagami show with Leo and Christy.
Hi, everyone.
Saturday, June 8th, 2024. The Leo Zagami show. Today we have also the opportunity on the second part of the show, which is only broadcast on Rumble and X, to receive phone calls from our audience and discuss the subjects that we're going to be, of course, analyzing today. There's some interesting subjects today, and of course we have here also a new book which is going very well. It's in the charts and the bestsellers. It's volume 10 of my Confessions, Islamic Freemasonry and the Secret Societies Behind the Eternal Conflict in the Middle East. Is an unprecedented book, as nobody has really discussed this subject before, and we have some incredible revelations inside this book that I'm sure you will appreciate. So get your copy now. It's a way of also sponsoring our show. And Christy will also tell us who are the sponsors of today's show. Christy.
Thank you so much for everyone that donated this week to sponsor this show. Special thanks to Daniel Estes for his great donation, and everybody else that donated, Bruce Kodish and Sue M. Lee and Malgarazada Minta. Thank you very much. You guys rock. I love you. Thank you. That's why we're here. Did I say Bruce? I said Bruce. Bruce Kodish. Everybody that bought the book, thank you so much. You guys rock the cast.
Absolutely. This book, guys, is becoming really a classic for many people. It's in the charts. In fact, I would like to go and analyze immediately where this book stands in the charts at the moment, because we're not just making things up. But this book is actually a bestseller. People are enjoying it in both the Kindle format and the paperback format. So here we go. Let me check the situation for you. This is, for example, the Kindle version. It's the #1 new release in Islamic history. It has 3 ratings, 5-star ratings. You can see it's number 12 in the bestseller rank in Islamic history, number 39 in history of Islam, and number 54 in occultism. This is for the Kindle. Let's also go and check out the paperback. It's slightly different, but we have the same reviews. 5-star reviews. Is #1 new release still in Islamic social studies. However, the charts differ a little bit here, and we have number 8 in Islamic social studies and number 41 in ancient and controversial knowledge. Thank you guys for making this book a bestseller on Amazon. Yeah, you all deserve a nice applause, including a sponsor. So here we go with the applause. No, not only your applause, we have a proper applause for our sponsors.
My applause is very proper.
Absolutely. So here we go. Okay.
Are we dancing now?
If you truly support the show, you have to get volume 10. Guys, volume 10. Today we had the good news that 4 hostages were finally released with the help of the IDF. It wasn't just a voluntary release by Hamas. These people are criminals and thugs. They will never let go of these hostages. Many of them, unfortunately, have already died. But we had also the liberation of Noah, which was this female, this young lady who we saw in the video. If you remember, she was filmed while she was
The one they
put
dragged
in the
truck?
pickup truck.
Gosh,
Yes.
yeah.
So we finally had the liberation of Noah together with other three. Of course, the critics are saying there were 200 people almost killed for this in this operation. But what you don't understand is if you protect these criminals, well, then you are part of the problem. So that's what happens. This is, of course, the liberation of Noah, and we have also more scenes that I want to share with you. This is, of course, the news of the day. Everybody's talking about it. It kind of changed things around in a very delicate moment where there have been ongoing discussions between the parts, but never any conclusive solution coming up. So in the end, they decided to intervene. The commander in charge of the special operation actually got killed during the operation. Aside from, like I said, many people, probably also some innocent people got killed. But if you are protecting these people, if there is a silence that is kind of accepting what is going on, and you are not, at the end, it's like the mafia. And I explain this in my new book. The mafia has an Islamic root.
It's incredible to read.
Yes. So people might not know this, but it's very important to outline this. The mafia has an Islamic root. And why we still have the mafia in Italy? Because everybody is scared to talk. And the same thing happens, unfortunately, with Hamas in Gaza. This is their arrival of the 4 hostages in Israel at the hospital where they were treated after being held hostage since the October 7th. Somebody says it took 500 civilians intense slaughter to rescue them. But I repeat, if you protect these crooks, if you don't talk, and maybe you have never been to the Middle East, but it's like everybody stays silent. And that's a big problem with Islam here. Islam is basically having all these problems because they don't talk. They might live next to a terrorist. They might live. They might have a terrorist in their own family, and they don't talk. Staying silent in front of these criminals makes it easy for these mercenaries of the New World Order. I'm not saying in my book that the fault is only of the Islamic people. The fault is of the Christians. the Muslims, and the Jews that have all been infiltrated by the Illuminati and manipulated in this never-ending, eternal conflict. And that is really the problem, no, Christy? So, I mean, innocent people die. And like 500 civilians and tents were slaughtered today. Hundreds of years ago, thousands of civilians were slaughtered by Saladin and the invading army of the Seljuk Turks when they were trying to attack the Knights Templar base in Gaza. So what comes around, I would say?
What goes around comes around.
That's it. So
I love that saying.
Yeah. So I mean, it's like there is nobody that can claim ethic and moral superiority if we just dig deep in the history of this this very controversial piece of land, which is called Gaza. So just to say, I mean, it's important to state that, because otherwise nobody's here saying that the Israeli labor Zionists, or even those Messianic Jews, which are a product of British Israelism, in the end have always the right answer and the ethic and moral superiority. But the Islamic reality has been much more fractured, much more manipulated, and this is something that I expose in my book. And you can read this book and you can see that Islam has never been a religion of peace. I'm sorry to say that. Maybe they had an idea of peace, but unfortunately they never really had. The Muslims want to destroy Israel and kill the Jews. Of course, this is what the Jews say. But at the same time, we have to understand that the people who established and forced the Jews out of Europe with pogroms, with all the persecutions, were the same people who then told them to go and colonize Israel. And unfortunately, we see the history of the Sabbatean Frankists, this heresy within the Jewish people that has ruined, unfortunately, the Jewish people. Because if today we have progressive Jews, reformist Jews, and all that, is all a product of the Sabbatean Frankists that has nothing to do with the original Jews. So we have to be a little bit realistic about that. Of course, we can't know exactly how many civilians have been killed. Some will say 150, some will say 200, some will say 500. We don't know because the numbers are set by Hamas. So also we have to understand that the first victim of war is truth. So in this case, it's very difficult to be certain that all these people have been killed. But let's go back to the fact that if you are silent when somebody in front of you is keeping hostage people for months and months, don't tell me that the people living in that part of Gaza where these hostages were found didn't know that there were some strange activities in the area and there were some hostages kept there. So we have to be at least honest and say they are compromised. The people in Gaza have been brought up with hate, with brainwashing since an early age. They are brought up with the idea that they have to kill the Jew, they have to kill the Jew. And going back in history, we see that this problem arises because 1,000 years ago, there was, of course, almost 1,000 years ago, the beginning of the Crusades, which was something that definitely was important in the history of this region. But the Crusades themselves were inspired partly by Islam. Because there was no concept of holy war within Christianity. The Pope had to borrow this concept from the Muslims. So the Zionist element that today rules Israel is corrupt. Why? Because it has embraced socialism communism. And this is unacceptable, guys. We have to be honest about the fact that labor Zionism is an enemy, just like Hamas. So Husseini, we know very well, met with Hitler. This book explains very well. He was the uncle of Arafat. He probably was one of the main proponents of the Holocaust. So you can't blame the Jews for hating these people, the Palestinians, who somehow have inspired the Holocaust. So this is a never-ending tale of hate on all sides that sooner or later people will have to say. We have each done our wrongdoings, and everybody has to admit their sins, their errors, because only in that way we can maybe eventually find some peace. To have a recognition of a Palestinian state for Israel, that is the product already of a big compromise. Because Israel came into existence because, I repeat, the European powers had all persecuted the Jews. Everybody. The Russians, the Germans, and even the English in their own way. They were a little bit more diplomatic because, of course, they had also a great Sabbatean Frankist element within England that was very strong also politically, that wanted somehow this British Israelism to rise and these Messianic Jews to go back to their land. Let's not forget that it was Shabbatai Zevi with the Natan of Gaza, the first proponents of going back to Israel in that way. And in this book, I reveal for the first time, for people who don't know, that Shabbatai Zevi, his father was a British agent. So Great Britain has a great responsibility here. France has a great responsibility. Russia has a great, Germany has a huge responsibility. And I think that that's the problem here. The responsibility of the European powers that now, of course, being, so many years after, nowadays, we are over 100 years after the Sykes-Picot Agreement. We are over 100 years after the Balfour Declaration. We are so distant in time from that moment in which the Ottoman Empire fell down, and suddenly this whole thing came into being, which created countries that were not there previously. And the Jews, of course, want to go back to the Holy Land before Shabbatai Zevi, but there was discussion on where to go. Even at the time of Theodor Herzl. Theodor Herzl himself was trying to decide where to go. Of course, the ideal setup would have been where they are now. And that's why, in the end, today, at least, if we want to have a balanced perspective, we have to leave the Jews in Israel, because there's no reason to say from the river to the sea, when you know that there is, after, no space, where you want to send it. And there is also no reason in creating Palestine when you have so many Arab states that were created out of thin air around them, like Jordan. Then that should also somehow be part of this whole equation. So it's very complex in nature, the geopolitical struggle that is going on in the Middle East. But at the same time, we have to understand that all parties have somehow worked behind the scenes with this Illuminati Masonic structure. And Jordan, like somebody is saying in the chat, is Palestine. Of course it's Palestine. But that's why today, to create a Palestine as another nation within a nation, which is also not so big, because Israel is not that big in the end. It's all, everybody's is kind of clumped together and put together. And also, why does Egypt refuse to welcome their Muslim brothers from Gaza? Why? Why is Egypt closing, And the same happens also with Jordan. The same happens with Lebanon these days. The same happens with every single state. Lebanon actually was destabilized by the arrival of the Palestinians when they were kind of kicked out of Jordan. So wherever they go, there is a disequilibrium, and I will stress that we need to find a balance by each admitting our faults in this situation. But the creation of a two-state solution seems ridiculous when the state is already so small. I mean, it seems a little bit too small for a two-state solution. However, I think that it's important to understand how the Western Freemasons, the Western Illuminati, have played their cards to make the Ottoman Empire implode, and from there on, all this chaos arise, because that's really what happened. For 800 years, guys, there was the Ottoman Empire, and actually the Ottoman Empire was rather balanced. And unfortunately, today, instead, the Middle East is everything but balanced. So let's see what's going to happen. In the meantime, though, there is also another front, and this front is created coincidentally in the birthplace of Jacob Frank. I'm talking about Ukraine. And Ukraine was the birthplace also of Madame Blavatsky. So Ukraine has given birth to some pretty evil people. Without these people, we will not have probably the establishment of modern Satanism as we know it. So Ukraine, karmically speaking, has some bad elements. Somebody says here in the chat, Hamas was kicked out of Egypt. Hamas is a product of the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood has given birth to all these Salafi jihadists, which include Hamas, Al-Qaeda, ISIS. They all come from the same, and they all work for NATO. They all work for the military-industrial complex, guys. So in the end, they are simply part of this military-industrial complex. And today, actually, I found an article which I would like to discuss with you. That shows really this whole thing, how it's never ending, because it's part of a never ending game that brings the money in circulation through the corrupt politicians in Washington, and they are killing us all. I think that this article is really great. I suggest it for all of you. Is on counterpunch.org. The military-industrial complex is killing us. And it's actually very interesting to see also how this money, you see, it goes in a never-ending circle. It's a little bit like the Gnostic symbol of the snake that bites its tail.
Yeah, no? It's like an Ouroboros.
Yes, absolutely. So it goes from the lobbying money, more dollars, Congress, taxpayers' money, Pentagon in all its form, and then it goes back into and it never ends. It never ends.
It's all of it. It needs to end.
So this is the problem here. It's not about Israel. It's not about Ukraine, but mainly it's also about America and its military-industrial complex, which is at the heart of NATO. So if we have to believe that NATO is actually in control of the Muslim Brotherhood, of Hamas, of Al-Qaeda, of ISIS, because that's how it is, they are the mercenaries of the New World Order, well, this is the problem here. The never-ending vicious cycle that we see depicted here. The military-industrial complex, the taxpayers' money, and these corrupt politicians. It's incredible, no? So the basic system works like this. First, Congress takes exorbitant sums of money from US, from us, taxpayers, every year and gives it to the Pentagon. Second, the Pentagon, at Congress direction, turns huge chunks of that money over to weapons makers and other corporations via all too lucrative contracts, gifting them tens of billions of dollars in profit. Third, those contractors then use a portion of these profits to lobby Congress for yet more Pentagon contracts, which Congress is generally thrilled to provide, perpetuating a seemingly endless cycle.
That's just terrible.
So it is about corruption. It is, regardless of the wars that we are having at the moment, this is about corruption. it is about selling weapons, and there is an industry that, of course, it's never ending, it's eternal. So, of course, Israel has the right to exist. We are happy for the hostages that have come back home.
This morning at 11 a.m., Israeli Special Forces conducted complex hostage rescue mission and successfully rescued 4 of our hostages from Hamas captivity in Gaza. Noar Gamani, Almog Meir Jan, Shlomi Ziv, and Andrei Kozlov. They are back home in Israel. They are alive. They are well. They will undergo medical examination and will soon be reunited with their families in the hospital. Noah, Almog, Andrei, and Shlomi were rescued after 246 days in Hamas captivity after they were brutally kidnapped from the Nova Musical Festival on the 7th of October. This was a high-risk complex mission based on precise intelligence conducted in daylight in 2 separate buildings deep inside Gaza. While under fire inside the buildings, under fire on the way out from Gaza, our forces rescued our hostages. We will not lose sight that 120 hostages are still being held by Hamas in Gaza, men, women, children. When we say that we will do everything to bring our hostages back home, we mean it. We will not stop fighting for their freedom. Any other decent country in the world would do the same.
And of course, we can't blame Israel for taking this action, because after all, Hamas waged war on the 7th of October, but definitely there were some Israel elements in the intelligence, military intelligence in particular, Shin Bet, who was overseeing the security of the border, who failed, and they did it willingly. They probably did it willingly, because this is a never-ending game of hate, of constant war. And when I talk about the military-industrial complex, let's not forget that hideous peer that Joe Biden spent hundreds of millions, and then part of it was lost at sea. And now, finally, with other 22 million spent, they managed to rebuild it. Other 22 million. I mean, I don't understand how many millions they need to spend for an army floating pier. It's incredible. I mean, the amount of money. In this book, I show with the evidence that has not been debunked by anybody, because this is scholarly evidence, that the worst enemy of the Jews are the Jews. When we think that one of the founders of the Shiite form of Islam, which is the most nefarious, the most evil, was actually a Jew, when the founder of the Fatimid dynasty was also partly Jew, these Jews were part of the Erev Rav. They go back in time. They go back in time to the moment in which Moses came out of Egypt, and along with him came also these magicians, these high priests from Egypt that will bring along also the building of the golden calf later on, which of course made Moses very angry. So, I repeat, the worst enemy of the Jew, if you want to be honest with it, is always the Jew. And that's how it is. So there is those who are a bit anti-Semitic can come here on the chat thinking that we are ignorant. We are not ignorant, guys. We're going to debate you. We're going to reply to you. Says the Jews have never been peaceful. Guys, I've been brought up amongst Jews and Christians, and I had my own experience with the Muslim world, which I also rely on in this book. And from my own personal experience, the ones who have never been peaceful are the Muslims. I'm sorry. I don't want to be bashful. I don't want to be condemning a whole race of people, because not a race. Muslims can be Arabs, Persians, many other races. It's about being honest. Islam was born as a religion of war because it was through this expansion that we saw the colonizations of many countries from a religion that is born quite late in time and is born in the 7th century in the Arab Peninsula and start expanding more and more and more. So Leo Zagami can tell you this. Leo Zagami, from my own personal experience in the Illuminati and the Freemasons, I have saw how the Islamic world operates. And the Islamic world is also the only one that doesn't want to denounce their own Freemasons. They point the finger out to Israel, to America, but then nobody discusses the Freemasons in Egypt, in Turkey, and in other Islamic countries. So it was about time that somebody brought up this, all the names showing you. And like I said, up until now, there's been nobody within the Muslim world that has been able to debunk this book, which is built on solid evidence. And it's not about taking sides with anybody here. And I invite everybody, of course, to stay calm within the chat, because we try.
Really?
Yes. I think that, of course, everybody can bring their own idea. In the end, remember.
I have my own ideas, though, until I read your book.
Yes, yes.
And I think whoever's having a problem needs to finish the book.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I think that this book needs to be read. This book needs to be read, and it needs to be read from the beginning to the end, not just a couple of chapters. From the beginning to the end, to really realize all the compromises that have been done. The Christians shouldn't have done the Crusades. They shouldn't have established the Knights Templars in the first place, and all the knighthoods that were basically based on similar concepts that were elaborated in the Muslim world. The Pope was scared of this Islam expanding, and so he reacted that way. But of course, it created a series of problems. The Christians shouldn't have done it, but then the Muslims shouldn't have started expanding in territories that by tradition were not theirs. I mean, we almost can't blame the Pope and the Vatican for having reacted in that way when the Muslims were arriving almost in Rome. And Sicily was transformed in an emirate. And thanks God that the Normans arrived and freed Sicily from the Muslims, because otherwise I would have probably been raised in a very different way. So it's about understanding that in Sicily, mosques were transformed in churches, while in Turkey, churches were transformed in mosques, because the evolution was in a different direction. We went from the Byzantine Empire into the Islamic colonization that, of course, later on will establish this empire that gave a relatively stable few hundred years. And then Great Britain, the United Kingdom, and France, and the European Illuminati, Germany, and all the rest, thought that the Ottoman Empire needed to be destabilized, needed to implode. And they managed, with the help also of the Dommeh, which are Sabbatean Jews. So we have also this Jewish element that is present. No? Listen, it's a historical fact that within the order of Assassins, Shia Nizari Islam, there were 4,000 Jews. So who were these Jews? So that's why we go back to the worst enemy of the Jew is the Jew. And that's unfortunate, but that's a reality that a lot of Jewish friends will, I think, agree with. Any case, Iran became Shia because they wanted to separate themselves from the Sunni Orthodox world, the prevailing faction, which was established with Muhammad, started to colonize countries which had a much older tradition. Let's remember that Islam expanded in territories which had a pre-Islamic tradition that goes back thousands of years. Ancient Mesopotamia, Egypt. I mean, these countries couldn't just plainly say, okay, fine, the Quran, what a great book. A lot of them, and I explained this in my book, integrated then those elements, and that's where Shia Islam came together, and later on also all the ramification, because then you had to have Shia, the Nizari, the Ismaili, and then you have the Druze, and then the Alawi, and then it becomes so complex for the Western mind that it becomes almost a headache, no? Almost a headache.
You made it clear in your book, though. I could understand it. I understood all of it.
That's very good. That's very good. Now, the problem we have today is this military-industrial complex that wants to wage war against Russia. So, let's hear what Vladimir Putin has said, because I think it's important to understand that Putin himself doesn't really want to use nuclear weapons to defeat Ukraine because he doesn't see any need. However, if now with France and with the West ever so aggressive in giving more and more weapons, and France actually getting involved directly with their own soldiers and creating a French brigade and attacking Russia. Just yesterday, guys, Macron has given the possibility to Zelensky, this Sabbatian Frankist, because Zelensky is a Sabbatian Frankist, is a progressive Jew, to wage war against Russia using their Mirage fighter jets. Do you know what that means? It means almost immediate war between a NATO country with Clause 5 involved. That means all of the NATO countries will be involved. But let's see what has happened with Putin.
У нас сейчас идет очень применение, неприменение, в каком случае применять. У нас есть ядерная доктрина, и там все написано. Я вот вчера только там разговаривал с руководителями этих информационных агентств, я об этом сказал. У нас там все написано. Это применение возможно в исключительном, именно в исключительном случае, в случае угрозы суверенитету и территориальной целостности страны. В исключительных случаях. Я не считаю, что такой случай наступил. И нет такой необходимости. Но эта доктрина, это живой инструмент, и мы внимательно смотрим за тем, что происходит в мире, вокруг нас, и не исключаем внесение каких-то изменений в эту доктрину. Если, не дай бог, дойдет до каких-то ударов, то все должны понимать, что вот у России есть система СПРН, система по предупреждению, раннего предупреждения о ракетном нападении. У США есть. Больше в мире нигде такой системы развитой нет. У нас есть. В Европе развитой системы нет. Они в этом смысле более или менее беззащитны. Это первое. Второе, мощность ударов. У нас наше тактическое ядерное оружие в 3 раза мощнее, в 4, чем использованные американцами бомбы против Хиросимы и Нагасаки. В 3-4 раза. У нас по количеству их в разы больше. И на европейском континенте, и даже если американцы привезут свои из США, у нас все равно в разы больше. Но если дойдет, не дай бог, что бы очень не хотелось, я переключусь. Вопрос... Теперь по поводу того, что мы поставляем оружие. Мы пока не поставляем, пока, но мы оставляем за собой право это делать тем государствам, либо даже каким-то легальным структурам, которые испытывают определенное давление на себе, в том числе и военного характера, со стороны тех стран, которые поставляют оружие на Украину и призывают их использовать против нас, против нашей российской территории. Темы нет. Если они поставляют в зону боевых действий и призывают использовать по нашей территории это оружие, почему же мы тогда не имеем права делать то же самое, зеркально на это отвечая? Но сказать, что вот мы завтра будем это делать, я тоже не готов, потому что в любом случае любая такая поставка сопряжена с целым рядом обстоятельств, которые так или иначе влияют на определенные регионы мира, и мы должны, конечно, об этом подумать.
This was, of course, Vladimir Putin in his hometown of St. Petersburg, a place I love very much. I've been many times, who was, of course, giving, I think, a final warning to the West. And I mean, it was very moderate in his approach, though. There is a lot of equilibrium in the way he puts through his concepts. He understands very well that, for example, the use of nuclear weapons will mean also harming his own soldiers, because they will also have problems of radioactivity, once these weapons are deployed. Yeah. So it's not only about the civilian populations involved, but for him it's also about his own soldiers. So, and he has really spent a lot of human force. A lot of Russian soldiers have died for this war in Ukraine. I want to put here on the screen a way, which is our main way. We have also Cash App. Our handle is at leozagami.com. This is the main way in which you can sponsor us. In the second part of the show, we will put up the phone number in 10 minutes or so, and we will open the phone lines, and we will be discussing also the imminent closing of InfoWars, which is another important topic this week. We have a lot of important topics, so get ready. And if, of course, you want to participate, we will give you a phone number and we can chat together. Somebody was a little bit too aggressive on the chat. At the end, we had to block him, at least for this live stream, and I explain you why. Saying that all the Abrahamic religions are wrong, it's condemning also Christians. It's implying also that the Christians are wrong. And at the same time, the Jews are wrong. The Muslims, I have criticized them and have exposed them in this book. It's their own problem if they want to believe in this structure and organizations and institutions that have been manipulating them forever. However, the Abrahamic religions are at the base of our tradition, and we can't just wipe them off, because that's what the Illuminati want. They want to erase religions from our society and then offer a society which is no longer religious in the hands of cyber Satan, the AI, which becomes this all-seeing eye that dominates the whole scene. In the second part of the show, when I'm going to be discussing what happened to Alex Jones, I will be revealing also what happened to me and Alex Jones for the first time. I will reveal something that not many people know about, the direct involvement of this CRO, this guy who basically is in charge of his bankruptcy, who has decided some time ago to take my books off the info store.
Well, you're talking about it now. I thought we were going to do it on the break.
Of course, in the second part.
Oh, in the second part.
Okay. For the moment, though, we are still in the first part of the show, and I wanted to, of course, show other interesting elements of Biden's visit to Normandy. Well, we also, of course, how this guy is completely idiotic and makes up things out of thin air. Like in this interview with ABC, he said that he knew Putin for 40 years. 40 years will bring us back to the days in which Putin was a young KGB agent in the USSR, and then later on he moved on to become chief of the KGB intelligence station in East Germany. But how could Biden, a senator, a member of Congress, have any contact with him is a mystery. But we know that this guy talks bullshit all the time.
Let me ask you about what Vladimir Putin said last night about this authorization of American weapons inside Russia. He said the supply of high-precision weapons to Ukraine for strikes on Russian territory is direct participation in this war. He went on to say that this is the way to serious problems, and again talked about Russia's nuclear capabilities. Does that concern you?
I've known him for over 40 years. He's concerned me for 40 years. He's not a decent man, he's a dictator, and he's struggling to make sure he holds this country together while still keeping this assault going.
Okay, Joe Biden, 40 years ago, Vladimir Putin, he's a guy who's been around a long time. Totally idiotic. He also claimed during his presence in France, before he actually left France to come back here, unfortunately he's coming back here. He could have stayed in France, actually. Biden made his last speech with President Macron, where he claimed that he was a student of French history. Yes, yeah, French, student of French.
It's beautiful.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. President, dear Joe, Mr. President of D-Day in Normandy.
It was a moving experience for a student of French history to be. And yesterday I announced $225 million in new security assistance to Ukraine, and it's the sixth package we've provided, with $61 billion in additional aid to Ukraine. And we won't stop, you know, Putin not going to stop at Ukraine. And the existential threat of climate change, which is just growing greater, we're working together to accelerate the global transition to net zero. It is the existential threat to humanity, among the only existential threat to humanity, including nuclear weapons. And, you know, the fact is that I could go on.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you, President.
Thank you.
Mr. President, can you give us an update on the Russian assets? Did you discuss that today?
Joe bidet, they call him in Italy. Bidet, it's a thing they use in Italy. You want to explain what is a bidet?
I think Americans know.
Okay, Americans
it's
know.
another toilet next to the toilet.
Yeah, it's a Joe
Wash your
bidet. And we had that moment in which he basically seemed to have been pooping himself. That was when he was in Normandy. And he kind of like had that moment. And
in Normandy, he did it?
Here.
Oh, no.
Distinguished guests, please welcome the Honorable Lloyd J. Austin.
Now, there's two possibilities
I
here.
never saw it.
Either he was pooping, or either he was sitting on an invisible chair. But you
Could be either one.
it could be either one. We will be
But
discussing.
I don't think he would do that. I don't. no, I think he's just
What was
out
the
of it.
wife telling him?
I think he's just out of it. Probably Joe, there's not
Jill-
his hair there.
Jill was flight on purpose. He had to reach his husband there so he could control him and make sure that he stayed on track. At one point, these veterans who are 100 years old had to pick him up because he was wandering off. So, I mean,
Wow.
when you actually, today was a sad day. It was a sad day because a 19-year-old astronaut who had apparently gone around the moon died
90, right?
90. William Anders. It happened earlier today.
We've now learned from the family that Bill Anders' body has been recovered from these waters, his plane going down just 80 feet from the shores of Jones Island.
It's a nice sunny day, so a few people are out and about.
A nice sunny day in the San Juans, beauty marred by tragedy.
Yeah, I could not believe what I was seeing in front of my eyes.
Philip Person and his wife Katie were on vacation watching wildlife when they thought they were witnessing some sort of air show. Then, this.
It went into a barrel roll, sort of a loop. It was inverted, went into this barrel roll loop thing, tried to pull up before it hit the water, but it was too low when it started the loop, and it didn't clear the water. It looked like it clipped a wing at first and went down very hard, burst into flames, broke apart, and instantly went underwater.
Engines of the first stage were ignited.
King 5 News has confirmed the pilot of that plane was retired U.S. Air Force Major General and Apollo 8 astronaut Bill Anders. Anders was one of the first 3 humans to orbit the moon. Anders helped pave the way through the stars for the lunar landing and took this iconic photo of the Earth, which many believe started the global environmental movement.
If he started the global environmental movement, he could have basically done something that wasn't so helpful. But in any case, we don't really know if these people ever went to the moon because it's really strange. They can never manage to go back to the moon. In any case, we see a guy, an old guy, dying with what he liked to do. He liked to fly. He said it. I will fly. I will do it till the end.
In Anacortes. Almost exactly 2 years ago, I had the chance to sit down with Anders and talk to him about his life, career, and love of flight.
I'll keep flying as long as I can crawl in the airplane.
That's it. He said, yeah, I mean,
He died
what he liked to do. So, I mean, we of course, rest in peace. Our condolences to the family, but it's great when you die doing what you like to do all your life. I think it's a great thing. I mean, he liked to fly, and so that's it. Now, let's move forward. We are still in the first part of the show, and we are, of course, we have these pro-Palestinian protesters. We've been discussing these pro-Palestinian protesters sponsored by George Soros, another Sabbatean Frankist Jew who is sponsoring this, and they are all going to protest tonight at the White House. Yes, these idiots don't have anything better to do. Of course, everything is sponsored by George Soros, Rockefeller, and all their friends. So they have the money to put together all these buses from all over America to go to DC to protest against Joe Biden.
Free Palestine! Free, free, free Palestine! Free, free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free, free Palestine! Free, free, free Palestine! From the river!
If you are against Israel at the moment, you're siding with what is sponsored by George Soros. So I don't know how that can make you happy, guys. No?
It's all Illuminati.
It's all Illuminati, it's all Sabbatean Frankist, it's all, of course, also Jesuit control. But in Washington, they are preparing for protecting the. While they didn't really prepare that much to protect Trump when he was attacked in the White House by a bunch of thugs outside, when it comes to Joe Biden, they of course have put up barricades and all that. This is what happened today in Washington. You see all these barricades preparing for the protest. And while all this is going on, instead, here in Southern California, in Newport Beach, the arrival of great President Donald J. Trump, ladies and gentlemen. But in Southern California, here he has really a lot of fans, guys. Let me tell you, he has a lot of fans, a lot of cheering supporters.
All right, so I'm going to get one more shot of this crowd here at Jamboree and Coast Highway in Newport. Show you what's going on. President Trump should be arriving within maybe about an hour. We don't know when he's going to be here, but there's a huge crowd here at this corner. This is probably going to be the route that the president takes right through all of these incredible supporters who've been out here for hours already to see the president. Just an amazing crowd here. We've got people on this corner. We've got people on the corner over there. And we've got people down the street even. And that's where I'm headed because I think that's where he's going to slow down. And if I'm lucky, he'll be coming out.
Go Trump!
Absolutely incredible crowd here today. This is going to be awesome. President Trump in Newport Beach, California. Not a protester in sight. Nobody, no protesters. It's all pro-Trump.
Newport Beach, and this brings back some memories because I couldn't find any lawyers that would take on my case when I was actually getting my green card, trying to get my green card. As you know, this year I finally became American.
Actually, we got kicked out of the guy's office because he heard that we were Trump supporters.
Yes.
He kicked us out.
So I spoke with the Republican Association of Lawyers 5 years ago, and they pointed me to this lawyer firm in Newport Beach. That was
in Huntington.
No, yeah, but it was close to Newport Beach, Huntington Beach. I think. It's very close.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And it's like basically Newport Beach. It's full of Trumpians there. I mean, it's a different kind of setup from the rest of South California.
Yeah, really. I mean, we don't see anybody like that around here where we live. No.
No.
There's one person. She was sticking stickers on the garbage cans. They were actually InfoWars stickers.
It's incredible, though, that there can be such different kind of political backgrounds here in the south of California. Huh? There is all this. There is really a political divide that is incredible. You have people in Huntington Beach or in Newport Beach that are conservative, and I mean Newport Beach is just 14 miles from Anaheim. It's home of Disneyland. It's Anaheim, and it's as left as it gets, and all this happens in Southern California. It's quite interesting. It's quite interesting.
I guess we have Palm Desert. Because it's better over there.
Yes, there is also that they are rather supportive of President Donald J. Trump. Okay, for all the people, and there is a lot of people that at the moment are following us on Facebook, on YouTube, please come over to X, Ordinum Universalis. That's the handle, or the Universalis also, or Rumble. Rumble, you just have to put Leo Zagami. So please move to Rumble because we are ending here the transmission after the first part of the show because we can't risk being brought down during the phone calls because we are a little bit more open and uncensored when we are operating on X or Rumble. Isn't that the case, Christine?
Yeah. I guess so. Yeah, we don't say certain things.
We can't say certain things here on YouTube or on Facebook. So please, I repeat, join us on Rumble or X right now. Otherwise, you will miss the second part of the show and, of course, the phone calls. And I'm going to be putting the phone number up for those who are interested. Let me do it. Christy, can you please thank once again our sponsors?
Okie dokie. We have Daniel Estes and we have Bruce Kodish, and we have Mallory Zadaminta, and we have Sarah Emily. Thank you very much, everyone, for donating to the show for this month, and we really, really appreciate it. And everybody that bought the book, of course, everybody that bought the book.
And made this book into a bestseller, which is really very good thing.
It makes me happy to know that people are reading the book.
Absolutely. So I see you, and we see you in the second part of the show after Vincenzo Viceversa Medieval.
In that time, our world has taken so many steps in the wrong direction.